Welcome back to day 4 of our factoring unit. Today we are going to learn our fourth and final way to factor. So given a polynomial, you will be able to factor it using factor by grouping. All right, ladies and gentlemen, factor by grouping is not a method we're going to use all of the time. Okay, we are only going to use factor by grouping in very special cases. You're going to use it when your A value is a number other than 1. So when you are in standard form, if your A number is a number other than 1, for instance, that would be like 2x squared minus 5x plus 1. Okay? Or it might be negative 1x squared plus 6x minus 3. Okay, so it is when this A value, the number in front of your x squared, is a number other than positive 1. Okay, and in order to factor these types of polynomials, we're going to follow through these steps down below. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to go through those steps with you as we actually practice. So let's take a look. Step number 1, make sure the expression is in standard form. So remember, standard form is highest power, lower power, no power for your variables. So this is in standard form. Now, since my A value here is not a 1, I cannot use regular trinomial factoring. It doesn't work. Okay, and I take a look, there's no GCF. So I'm going to have to use factor by grouping. So this is what we're going to do. Step number 2, we're going to multiply the A and the C values. So A is the first value, C is the last value. So I'm going to go here to here. And now 3 times 8 is 24. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I am going to break this, instead of 3, I'm going to break this into 4 parts. The first part stays the same. I'm going to take this middle term and I'm going to break it into 2 parts. So 1, 2, and then I'm going to add the 8 here at the end. That stays the same. Okay, so now the reason why we multiplied this here is because now you are going to think of 2 numbers that multiply to 24 and add to 10. So can you think of those numbers? Multiply to 24 and add to 10. Well, that could be 2 and 12, but 2 plus 12 is 14, not 10. It could be 3 and 8. 3 times 8 is 24, but when you add it, it gives you 11. How about 6 and 4? 6 times 4 is 24, and it adds to 10. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my 6, I'm going to take this 10 and I'm going to break it into 6x and 4x. Okay, and I'm going to put it so that way I know the 3 and the 6 are in common and the 4 and the 8 are in common. So that's why I chose to put those there. Okay, and they're both positive. Okay, so now we've done step number 3. Okay, now we are going to group this into 2 pairs. So I am going to bring these 2 pairs together, and then I'm going to group these 2 together. And now what we're going to do is we're going to factor using GCF. So 3x squared and 6x, is there a GCF? Yes, the GCF is 3x. And then when I factor that out, we're left with x plus 2. Now I'm going to use GCF over here. 4x and 8, the GCF is a 4, and then I'm left with x plus 2. Okay, so that was step number 5. Factor each GCF. Now, let's see. Do you notice that both of your parentheses are the same? Okay, that's not a fluke. That's because we wanted that to happen. This is our very first factor. Our first factor is going to be x plus 2. That's the first part of our answer. And now the second parenthesis is going to be 3 and 4. So 3x plus 4. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is our final solution. Now, as a reminder, we can always check. So if I were to want to check this, I would write it out again, and I would use my long distribution to check it. X times 3 is 3x squared. X times 4 is 4x. 2 times 3 is 6x. And 2 times 4 is 8. And if I take a look here, aren't those the numbers I had up here? Yep. And when I combine those middle terms, we get our original answer. So check, it worked. All right, let's go ahead and let's try another one. So number 2. I look here, it's a trinomial, but my a is bigger than 1. So what I'm going to do is use factor by grouping. So 2x squared blank blank minus 3. Now I'm going to multiply the first term and the last term. So 3 times 2 gives me a negative 6. So now we need to think of two numbers that multiply to negative 6 and add to positive 1. So multiply the negative 6, so it means one's a positive, one's a negative, and add to 1. So that's going to be 3 and 2, and since they add to a positive 1, I'm going to make my 3 a positive and my 2 a negative. Okay, now that I've broken it down, now I can use my grouping. So I'm going to group these two together and these two together. And now we're going to use GCF factoring. So the GCF here is 2x. So I'm going to be left with x minus 1. My GCF here is a 3, and we get x minus 3. Now if I look, oops, x minus 3. Nope, that's x minus, I put the 3 on the outside. This would be x minus 1. So now if I look at my parentheses, they are the same. That is my first factor. So the first part of my answer is x minus 1. And the second part of my answer, I take the outside terms and I put them together. And that is my final solution. Okay, if I wanted to come down here and check, I want to make sure that it is correct. So I'm going to rewrite it out, x minus 1. 2x plus 3, I'm going to use my long distribution. X times x is 2x squared. X times 3 is 3x. 1 times, negative 1 times 2, negative 2x. And negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. Now when I combine my like terms, I get 2x squared plus x minus 3, and that matches my beginning. So we've done it. Nice job. Okay, so let's flip it over and we're going to try maybe 2 more. So let's go ahead and let's skip number, actually no, let's do number 4. I like this, or number 3 here. I like this one. So let's go ahead and take a look here. So if I look, it is a trinomial. It is in standard form, highest power, lower power, no power for the variable. And I see that my a value is bigger than 1. Okay, which means we're going to have to use factor by grouping. So factor by grouping, we write the first term, blank, blank, plus 5. So now I'm going to multiply the first term and the last term together. So 5 times 4 is 20. So now we need to think of two numbers that are going to multiply to positive 20, and they are going to add to negative 12. They multiply to positive and add to a negative. That means they're both going to be negatives. And let's see if we can come up with those two numbers. Well, let's see, 4 times 5, but when I add those together I get 9, not 12. How about 2 and 10? 2 times 10, 20. 2 plus 10, 12. So let's go ahead and use that. So a 2 and a 10. I'm going to put my 2x with the 4. I'm going to put my 10x here with the 5. Okay, so now we can use our GCF factoring. So if I look at my first two, my GCF is a 2x. And then I divide that and put it on the outside, so that's going to leave me with 2x minus 1. Okay, now when I come over here, and this is the tricky part, we want this x value to match this one here, which means I want this to turn into a positive which means it's negative right now. So I'm going to GCF a negative and bring it to the outside. So I'm going to bring out a negative 5 because negative 10 divided by negative 5 is a positive 2x. And a positive 5 divided by a negative 5 gives me a negative 1. So now my parentheses match. So my first term is 2x minus 1. And my second factor, I put the outsides together and we get 2x minus 5. And that is our final solution there. Okay, let's take a look now at number 4. So the first thing is we have to make sure it's in standard form. Right now, is this in standard form? No, it is not, because the highest power is not first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this in standard form. So standard form means this is going to be negative y squared. Then we're going to put the 7y, and then we're going to put the 8. Okay, so now it's in standard form. So this is a trinomial, but if I look at the a value, the number in front of the y squared, it's a negative. It's not a positive one, which means we're going to have to use factor by grouping. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to multiply 8 times negative 1, which is going to give us a negative 8. Now I'm going to break this into 4 terms. Negative y squared blank blank plus 8. So let's think of 2 numbers that multiply to negative 8 and add to positive 7. Well, 2 and 4, but that's not going to add to 7. And again, this is a negative 8. So let's see, one's a positive, one's a negative. How about we do positive 8, negative 1? That would work. So I'm going to put the negative 1y here and the positive 8y here. Okay, so now that I found my terms, now we can factor using GCF. So here, if I notice, my GCF is going to be a negative y. And when I factor that out, I'm left with a y plus 1. Over here, I'm going to factor out an 8, and I'm left with a y plus 1. Now my parentheses are the same, so my first factor is a y plus 1. And then I put the outsides together for my second factor, negative y plus 8. And you've got it. Okay, let's go ahead. We're going to try just a few more. So let's take a look at number 5. Is it in standard form? Yes. Is the a value bigger than 1? Yes. That means we have to use factor by grouping. So let's write down 5x squared blank blank minus 6. Now we're going to take the first term and the last term, we're going to multiply them together. So 5 times negative 6 is negative 30. So we want to think of 2 numbers that are going to multiply to negative 30 and add to positive 13. So if they multiply to a negative, one's a positive, one's a negative, and they're going to add to 13. So what I'm going to have you do is pause the video. When you know what those 2 factors are, I'd like you to type them in. Okay, were you able to come up with positive 15 and negative 2? If so, you've got it. Now we're going to factor by grouping. So I'm going to group the first 2 together. Now I'm going to group the second 2 together. Okay, what I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to go ahead, GCF the first one, GCF the second one, and then plug it in. All right, let's see, were you able to get? All right, so that means our final answer then would be 5x minus 2 and x plus 3. Okay, for our final question today, I'm going to have you try number 6 on your own. Put your final answer to the computer when you're done, and we are going to skip number 7 there at the bottom. So everybody just try question number 6, plug it in, and then have a great day. All right, so let's see if you were able to get it. Were you able to get 6x minus 5 and x plus 2? All right, have a great night, everyone.